Today, we learned that a federal judge in D.C. has ordered a who's who of Trump's inner circle to provide testimony in the special counsel's January 6 investigation. That list includes former Trump chief of staff Mark Meadows, his director of national intelligence John Ratcliffe, his former national security advisor Robert O'Brien, his former close advisor Stephen Miller, his former deputy chief of staff Dan Scavino, his former top Department of Homeland Security official Ken Cuccinelli, and his former White House aides Nick Luna and John McEntee. Trump tried to stop that crew from appearing before the January 6th grand jury. His attempts thus far to derail the investigation, however, have failed. And the legal battles are far from over. Jack Smith also has subpoenas out to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Joining us now to discuss all this is Devlin Barrett, national security reporter for The Washington Post, and Sean Wu, former federal prosecutor. Devlin, Sean, thank you both for being here. Sean, just from the prosecutor's perspective, I wonder how you interpret this string of victories for Jack Smith and what it portends for future subpoenas like those of Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner.
Well, I think, Alex, this goes to the heart of why the executive privilege defense or barrier is just not going to work here. I mean, dating back to United States versus Nixon, the Supreme Court had made it clear that the executive privilege, which does exist, won't shield the communications in the face of a criminal grand jury investigation, which is what we have going on right here. So these folks all indicate that Smith is zeroing in on people who are in a position to know about Trump's state of mind, the intent, which is really going to be the core of the controversy over whether he really believed that there was a problem with the election or what was he doing in terms of trying to overturn the election results. These are the kind of people you need to have in there to make that case for or against. My only frustration is I wish it happened a lot earlier.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some people wish the same. Devlin, in terms of Evan Corcoran's testimony today, 3.5 hours, we have little reporting from what went on behind closed doors. But I wonder what you think a grand jury might want to focus on in terms of Evan Corcoran as it pertains to the Mar-a-Lago case.
Well, remember the role Evan Corcoran plays in how this case develops. Evan Corcoran is the lawyer who conducts the search, classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, after Trump's team receives a subpoena demanding the return of all classified documents. That is a huge point of contention between the prosecutors and Trump's legal team, because remember, it is ultimately the government investigators come to believe that that was not a good faith and full effort to recover all the classified material, and that's what leads to the search later on. Evan Corcoran is the lawyer who does that search. Evan Corcoran is the lawyer who is primarily responsible for dealing with the government when the government is trying to recover these classified documents. One thing to consider, though, I think a lot of people think, oh, these people close to Trump are going to testify, they're going to give evidence against the former president. That's not necessarily the case. I think a lot of smart prosecutors put witnesses like Evan Corcoran or other people close to the main target of the investigation into the grand jury to see what the defense is. Do the people we are investigating have a strong defense against this accusation? I think a lot of smart prosecutors put those kind of witnesses in because it gives them sort of a first crack at whatever the defense might be. And that may be part of the dynamic and the legal jockeying that's going on here.
I want to follow up on that, Devlin, because you reported out that the grand jury is going to have access to Evan Corcoran's notes and documents. And I wonder if you could flesh that out a little bit more in terms of, their particular relevance to the Mar-a-Lago case.
Right. So we don't know what the notes say, but we know what Evan Corcoran's role was in this. And that's important because he was the one who did the search. So what did the notes say about where he was told to search? Was there any place that he was told not to search? Was Evan Corcoran told anything by his client, Donald Trump, that turned out not to be true? Remember, one of the other things that we and others have reported is that to get to this stage of getting Evan Corcoran's testimony, the judge had a essentially first look finding that there is some evidence here that Trump may have misled his own lawyers. So for all those reasons, you want to see what's in Evan Corcoran's notes, not just notes, but invoices, any emails between people. These are all important pieces of evidence that in many ways, in many instances, only Evan Corcoran can provide.
Yeah, and when you talk about key figures, Evan Corcoran is definitely the guy from Mar-a-Lago. But Shan, we know in the parallel January 6th probe, Mark Meadows, the president's White House chief of staff, some of whose texts we've been treated to as part of the January 6th committee investigation, was a key player in all of the events in and around the attempts to undermine the results of the 2020 election. I mean, Mark Meadows is the point person between Congress and Trump that day. He's the person that's on the call to Brad Raffensperger trying to get 11,000 votes in the state of Georgia so that Trump can win it. He's funneling the bogus election fraud claims from Congress to the White House. You know, he is a central player in all of this. And I wonder where you think Trump is most vulnerable in the January 6th probe when it comes to Mark Meadows' testimony.
I think for Mark Meadows, like Corcoran, although not a lawyer, he is the guy in the room. He's going to be extremely privy to what Trump's real thoughts were. And I think, importantly, even aside from the state of mind, it's his corroborating testimony to what Trump did or didn't do that day, what he really wanted to have happen, either through action or inaction. And that is circumstantial evidence just from the actions. He doesn't have to speculate as to what the former president was thinking. He can testify about what he did, what he was told, and what he didn't do after he was told about what was happening that day.
Devlin, do you see Meadows as another test of the defense's arguments, or do you think that that's just straight up, we want the information that Mark Meadows has?
Well, I think it's most likely both. I think the challenge with Mark Meadows is that he is not always a reliable narrator. And we know that he has in the past been very defensive of Donald Trump, including in the course of legal investigations. So I don't know ultimately what Mark Meadows will decide to tell the grand jurors. I will say that the large pattern of behavior from Mark Meadows is that I don't think he's going to necessarily be a willing or particularly helpful witness against the former president. But he may still be an important witness, even if he's not a cooperative witness, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense. Shan, I have to ask, you know, I don't, at the risk of being overly optimistic that the phase of prognostication about the special counsel probe may be coming to a close, do you see any indicators here, given the fact that we're talking about Meadows and Pence and Trump's lawyer in Mar-a-Lago? These people are all being rounded up and, you know, they're going to testify in front of these grand juries. Does that suggest to you that we are in the end stages of Jack Smith's investigations here?
I'd like to say yes, but I don't think so. These are really important people who any good prosecutor would want to have in there now. It really depends a lot on what he gets from them. He jumped on these sorts of witnesses early, anticipating a lot of litigation just to get them in there, and that's exactly what's happened. So if I had to say where he was, I'd say middle, maybe moving towards the end, but it's really these key witnesses they need to hear from in order to formulate what kind of evidence there is for potential charges. So sorry to disappoint.
Devlin, it's just, I mean, I don't know if it's a disappointment or not, but Devlin, when you think about the time frame here and what is unfolding in the Manhattan DA's case and his potential indictment of the president, do you think that has any effect, the politics that have been so primally injected into this fight by the former president, do you think that has any effect on the time frame that Jack Smith is thinking of? I know the DOJ operates above politics, but the landscape is so fraught already before even one criminal indictment has been launched.
You know, I think it's a great question, and it's a great concern, because obviously all of these cases are happening under a very intense public glare. But I really think at the end of the day, these prosecutors have to do their own jobs on their own, even if that risks some degree of, you know, timing problems or just confusion in the general public as to what the heck is going on right now. I just think at the end of the day, it's too messy for these prosecutorial arms to be coordinating or communicating in a significant, you know, intense or specific way. And so I don't think you're going to see much coordination. And if that creates a degree of public or political confusion, I suspect that that's something that the prosecutors believe they're just going to have to live with.
We're all going to have to live with it. Devlin Barrett and Shan Wu, thank you both for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.